So, Bruce, what are some of the myths about muscle testing?
Well, I think it's hilarious that when people have problems with testing, when people say, I don't know how to test and I don't trust my testing, that a lot of their difficulty is really mythological. In the 70s and the 80s especially, there was a lot of teaching of testing, and people tried to make it scientific in a way that really wasn't altogether appropriate from my point of view, because muscle testing is not, the way I test is different from the way you test. So really testing is only valid in the domain of one person. I know some people hate this, but this is actually the upside of truthiness, Stephen Colbert's truthiness. That what's true for me may or may not be true for you.
Right, truth is relative. And that ties in with what I think is one of the greatest truths about muscle testing, is that it's based on intention. So if you have a belief that if you wear gold jewelry, your muscle testing won't work, it won't. But if your intention is God is your partner and to know the truth for your body and for yourself for the highest good, that takes care of all of those other things.
It tends to. I want to go through some of the specific myths, though.
Right, because there's some juicy ones there.
There was a famous teacher in the 70s who used to say, you can't test until you have every drawer in the room you're in open, so that you had this kind of thing about openness going on. And I don't know anyone else who has that myth, but you got to admit that's a pretty interesting myth.
But you know what's fascinating about that myth is that if you take the externalization of everything needs to be open and you bring it inside and you know that you've done your prayer, you've made yourself safe, you've asked God to be your partner, you're automatically open where it matters.
Yeah, apparently it worked for him, and of course the metaphor of openness is not a bad idea.
Yeah, and then tell me about the water myth. I know that's a big
one.
one.
The water myth I think is the most common one. So the myth kind of goes, if you don't test, don't get a good test, or you can't test, that you might need to drink water or you're switched. We'll talk about switch next. The problem here with the water is that both are true. You can be dehydrated, but it doesn't have to interfere with your testing.
Unless you think it will.
Yeah, unless you think it will. Yeah. So drinking water sometimes has a very wonderful placebo effect of helping people to test because they think drinking water helps them to test. That's fine with me,
right.
But let's recognize it's somewhat
and also,
self-hypnosis.
Just know that I drink water before I test because I tend to be chronically dehydrated. My clients generally, I'd say 90% of the time, if I say, when's the last time you had a glass of water? They say, oh, this morning. So I incorporate it, but I incorporate it more for their comfort, because when we're not at a subliminal level thirsty, we're more present and open.
Yeah.
So it's a helpful myth in a sense, but it's not a have to.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah.
That's
I want to go
really
and talk about switched a bit.
Yeah.
There's a lot of literature about being switched as an obstacle to testing, and where I think the topic is going is probably to get rid of that altogether and to go into Bertrand's idea of willingness to heal. So there's, in my experience clinically with pretty large numbers of people, I don't see people switched. What I do see is people unwilling to heal, unwilling to test, and unwilling to connect their rational mind with their inner child and to get these two converged. If there is willingness for these two to converge, they can test. And I can demonstrate that. And pretty much any experienced practitioner can. So switching, forget it. Willingness to test is more the issue.
And I think that is the core issue, because in the hundreds of thousands of minutes, hours, whatever you want to say, of my working with people, I notice that the key is the willingness to heal, and that is relatively easily solved when the trust is brought forward. So that the part that's protecting you, not letting you have answers, feels safe enough that you can actually open to look for answers, just like a child would be really curious. Mommy, what's this? Oh, wow. And that wow is where the joy comes in and the freedom.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are some good myths.
Yeah. So it's not switching that's your problem. If you think switching is your problem, it's more the trust. And so it has to feel safe to bring these two together. And that takes us back to our prayers of protection,
Right.
which help make it easy for us to feel safe to converge.
And one of the prayers might be, dearest Mother, Father, God, I don't know how to do this. Can you help? Really short prayer. God help works really well.